Hi, I'm Marty Stone for Buckingham Investments, and the question we're going to answer today is, if I'm buying investment property, do I need to set aside reserves? And I can give you an unequivocal answer of absolutely you need to have reserves. The last thing you want to do is to get yourself in a financial pinch right in the beginning by stretching yourself too thin when you buy a piece of property. Now the question is, how much do you need to set aside? And there's going to be two ways that we're going to answer that. One is, I'm going to tell you that when you're qualifying for loans, most of the lenders are looking for you to have 2 or 3 times the mortgage payment in reserves. So if something, if you have a vacancy or issues, that you can make the mortgage payment from the money you got set aside. And I've put a chart on the board here talking about mortgage. The second thing that you're going to want to talk about or think about is your monthly expenses. You got to pay taxes, insurance, there's other expenses, utilities that go along with the building. You're going to want to have some reserves for those. And then there's going to be maintenance items and turnover expenses. The last 2 items on this list, you're going to need some help from an expert. If you've been managing for a long time, you're going to know how to pick these, but most of us are going to start with a property manager, and your property manager is going to help you with that. So again, with the mortgage payment, you're going to want to have 2 to 3 times your mortgage payment in reserves for your mortgage. For monthly expenses, you're going to probably want to have 3 times what your monthly expenses are in reserve. The next item, maintenance, is going to depend on the kind of property you buy. If you buy a property that's just been rehabbed and it's in really nice shape, your maintenance reserve is going to be pretty small. So you're not going to need a whole lot of money there. And again, you're going to get help with your property manager there. But in analyzing investment property, I can tell you that we usually think about maintenance on a monthly basis as being about 5% of your gross income. So remember that, 5% of the gross for an average building is about what you think it ought to cost you to run your building for maintenance items that come up. Finally, turnover. We never know how long our tenants are going to stay. We'd like them to stay forever, but it just doesn't happen. So one of the things you can do when you buy a piece of property is you can ask your manager, okay, for this kind of building, what's the average turnover cost for one of these apartments? And the owner and the property manager is going to tell you, let's say he says it's going to be $2,000. Well, that's another number that you could keep in reserve. Now what usually happens is, unless you're needing the cash flow from this property for living, you're going to buy a property, it's going to make you money every month, and you're not going to take that money out of that account, you're going to leave it there. So whereas you may start with a bigger number originally, every month that you put a little cash flow away from the building, you can take some of that money back, and then you'll finally have a nice comfortable reserve with that building. The other point is, the longer you own a piece of property, the more you'll know exactly how it runs, and then you will get comfortable with a certain amount of money that carries you along year after year. So remember, you never want to start without reserves, and this is a good rule of thumb for estimating those reserves. Thanks for listening.